and we're looking around the house, and I see two horribly hideous looking little dog-like creatures in this house. And my buddy, he sees them too. And they look really nasty, vicious. They have like disjointed elbows. Like their front legs look like a Cloverfield. The elbows are all kind of jacked up, but the head is kind of like upside down. It kind of looks almost like a person, but almost kind of like a dog or almost like a wolf or something. And the torso is really thin when the ribs are sticking out, and it's got spiky spine bones sticking out of it. It's really nasty. And so I'm like, well, what the heck are these things doing in the house?
You're listening to River City Mystery Podcast, the show that delves into the Evansville and surrounding tri-state area's mysteries, including unsolved crimes, murders, and disappearances. A show that isn't afraid to jump down the rabbit hole to investigate reports of local hauntings, sightings of UFOs and cryptids, among other paranormal phenomena. With your host, co-founder of the Humans of Evansville Facebook page, law office worker by day, insomniac researcher of the unknown by night, Matt Dyke. Welcome to episode 6. I'm joined by Joe Weigant, founder of EPIC, which is an acronym for Evansville Paranormal Investigations and Consulting. Joe retired as a detective after 23 years with the Evansville Police Department. He hosted the World Beyond radio show, where he interviewed other paranormal investigators, psychics, tarot readers, among others. He's a 6th degree black belt in Okinawan Kempo and a martial arts instructor at Club Bushido. Every year, Joe leads tours of Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. He's a psychic and spirit communicator, and Joe owns Tri-State Holistic Wellness, where he uses a combination of energy work known as Reiki, tuning forks, and other emotional and physical healing modalities to achieve holistic healing and well-being. And I could go on, but that's enough to get me started here, so thank you for joining me today, Joe.
Hey, thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. I love doing these radio shows, and I actually loved it whenever I ran mine, but sometimes those things don't get to work out forever. But thank you for inviting me on here. This is a great privilege.
Well, we'll start with EPIC, which is Evansville Paranormal Investigations and Consulting, which, other than sounding awesome, what exactly is that, and what do you do?
I get a lot of calls from people who want to join the group, and they want to go out and try to catch pictures and get recordings and do a lot of the EVP type stuff that they see on TV, but that's not really what what EPIC does. And I've had other people that have worked with me over time, but just trying to get scheduling working together with third party folks. And sometimes it's really cumbersome. So it's normally it's just my wife and myself. Mm-hmm. And people will get a hold of me either because they've seen me on the website or they've seen me on the Travel Channel or whatever it is. And they'll describe to me the problems that they're having in their house, foot stomping and voices and the shadow moving around the halls, and the kids and dogs are freaking out. And, sometimes it's even things like, the salt shaker is being thrown around the room and pictures flying off the walls. So, my wife and I will go out. And what I honestly do, and it looks very boring from the outside looking in, I couldn't do a TV show on what I do because the camera guy would fall asleep. I just walk into the room and I open up and I let my senses just kind of, float free. And I just start asking questions about what's going on in the house, and things will start appearing to me, and I start getting the hints of what's going on. And then about 99.4% of the time, it's usually some cranky dead person who doesn't want to give up his house. Mm-hmm. Or it's, some other disturbed person who has passed on and just doesn't want to let go of something, or who is attached to a person, place, or thing. And so then what I do is I cross them over, and then I do an energetic cleansing of the house. Sometimes we smudge, and then after that, the house calms down, everything's settled up, and we go. And that's basically what we do. I used to have business cards, and I think when I had a website for that, I would refer to it as a paranormal resolutions specialist, because a lot of people are really interested in the paranormal, but they're interested in it from the scientific point of view. Mm-hmm. about saying, what can we actually capture that can lead us to some kind of indication that there is some kind of a life after physical death and demise. And while I was a member of groups like that, what I see on TV and what I've seen from other groups like that is that, they will arrive on scene and set up gobs of equipment, and they'll spend hours and hours, sometimes a couple of days, trying to capture some evidence of what is, something that will meet what the client is complaining about.
Right.
And then at the end of it, a lot of the groups will go, yeah, you wouldn't believe it. We caught this voice. We've been listening to these recordings for 2 weeks now. We got this one voice on this one answer where the guy said, get out, or leave me alone, or buzz off, or whatever. And then that's it. That's the end of the thing.
And see you later.
Hey, your house really is screwed up. Yeah, you're right. There's something in here. We think that there might be some evidence that something could possibly be going on, but we really don't know what it is because there's no scientific evidence and blah, blah, blah. But thanks for letting us come out. And I'm going, that's not enough for me. People are complaining. They need their problems solved. That's what I do, is solve the problems. And so I'm not disparaging any group that's going out there. Everybody needs to gather up the evidence. And I think everyone needs to know the answers of what's really happening and what's going on. But I just talk to dead people and tell them to, hey, you got to go. There's a path for you to travel, and you're stuck on this rock, and you got to go. And so not only do I allow the decedent to experience their own peace and to further their pursuit of their path in the overall existence of the life of their spirit, but I also bring peace and resolution to the people who are living in the house, that all they really want to do is just redo the bathroom. Because oftentimes most of these, let's just say, for example, and let me just conjure up something here. You got a guy who dies at the age of 78, and he's been living in that house since he got married at the age of 20. Okay, so he has spent the entirety of his existence in that house, and he bought it when it was just a shack, and he spent his whole life putting everything he's got into fixing up this house and making it better.
Right.
And retired 20 years ago, and now he's run out of money to fix it. So the carpet's dated, the cabinets are, still 1983. And, but he's happy. He's lived there his whole life. His wife is gone, and now his time to go, and bam, he's dead. He unzips the meat suit and he steps out. And, within 6 months, the kids come in and clean out the house and put it up for sale because they'd rather have the money than to save the old man's house.
Right.
So some 20-year-olds move in there. And let's just say, they might have a young kid with them. They might not have a lifestyle that might be pleasing to the 78-year-old man. What is? Here he is in his spirit, in his mind. He still is as alive as he was before he unzipped the meat suit.
Okay.
And so he still is under the impression that, yes, this is my house. And sure, I don't have a body, so I can't interact with it anymore, but I'm not leaving my house behind. And even whenever the light comes in and it gives him the opportunity to move on, he's like, but no, I can't leave my house. I have to watch after this. So then, the light kind of goes away, and he's like, no, I'm going to stay right here because this is where my home is. And then the younger couple starts, tearing out the walls and pulling up the carpets, and they start ripping down the cabinets. And the old man goes, hey.
Right.
Hold on. I remember putting those cabinets in by hand. And then next thing you know, the salt shaker comes flying across the room. And then they call me up and they go, oh, I have a demon. Like, no, you don't have a demon. You don't have a demon. I've been doing this for years, and I've only ever run into maybe 3 things that we would even apply the name demon to.
Okay.
And so, no, you don't have a demon. You got a cranky old guy. And so I'll come over there and tell him, okay, dude, seriously, it's not your house anymore. I'm going to call the light down, and it's time for you to go in. And this is where you need to go. Trust me, all the people you love are there. Nothing that you love is here. This is where you have to go. You have to put this chapter of the life of your spirit behind and become something new the next time. You have to come back as a different person. Next time, you have to go in here and go on to the next section of your travels, whatever that is. You'll understand it when you get there. And they cross in. The house settles down. The people are happy. I do an energetic cleansing of the place, and then we're out. We're gone.
Wow. Why do you think some people decide to stick around and others move on without some sort of intervention, like from someone like you?
There are a number of reasons, and I teach this whenever I go see people's homes, or like if I teach classes on paranormal things like that. Some of the reasons are: number one, they've been taught their whole life that after you die, God comes down and he judges your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And you're either going to go to hell forever, or you're going to go to heaven and you're going to play a harp on a cloud with a white robe, and you're going to sing holy, holy, holy all day, or you're going to go to hell and you're going to get punished and everything's going to be miserable. And so they don't want to experience that judgment, because there's no human being that's ever been alive on earth that can look back on his life and say, I never made a mistake. I never did anything wrong. I mean, none of us can. And that's the whole point of human life, is that, yeah, we come here in order to learn these lives and in order to have these experiences, because it's what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these people don't want to go into the light because they're afraid of the judgment,
Okay.
because they're not entirely certain that they were good enough to get to heaven. And so they're like, I'm not going in there because I'm not going to go to hell. And some of them, they don't want to go in because of an attachment to a person, place, or thing. They become attached to, hey, look, this is my 32 Ford, and I've been sanding and painting and working on this thing my whole life. I've won a bunch of shows with it. I'm not leaving this car. I don't want something bad to happen to it. And they'll have a choice of staying here to see what happens to their favorite car or their house. Or I've had a case like this before, where there was an older couple in a house, and one of them died before the other. And so the one who died first, it was the husband.
Mm-hmm.
He died first, as normally happens. Men die first.
Right.
I joke around and I say, the reason men die first is because we want to. So the guy died first, and he said, no, I'm not going to go because my wife is alive. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stay along with her.
Okay.
Well, she, being in flesh still, was unaware of these kinds of events transpiring. So she lived out the remaining years of her life. The kids decided to put her in a home somewhere. She soon after, therefore, unzipped the meat suit and went on. But the guy, he had still stayed behind. She died, and she's like, okay, I'm ready to go be with Jesus. And she went right on in, and he got left behind here.
Okay.
And so he was stomping up and down the halls in this house, and he wasn't entirely pleased at, being at the age that he was when he went. He wasn't pleased because of the culture and the time period that he was raised in. A young lesbian couple had moved into his house and had their kids there.
Okay.
And he wasn't really on board with that kind of thing.
Right.
And so he was stomping around the house, and you could hear him moving up and down the halls. And I had to say, buddy, this ain't for you no more.
Right.
Look, I know you've lived in this house for 48 years, but it's time for you got to go. And so, I was able to get him to move along, and look, here's your wife. She's over here on this other side. You have to go there to be with her. And once he realized, geez, I found my wife now he can go. And so the house immediately calmed down. Everything was cool. And we left. So there's another reason why sometimes people don't go. And you'll see this at places like Gettysburg and Antietam,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the other Civil War battlefields. Is in the midst of battle, they say you never hear the bullet that kills you. You can hear all the other ones zipping around you, but the one that gets you, you're never going to hear it. Well, sometimes their life is snatched out of them so quickly that they don't realize they're dead. Or they do. And there's this thing among brothers in the military, like, I'm not leaving my buddy behind. We're never going to leave a man behind. And so they'll, like, boom, they get shot. They're dead at the age of 20. And they go, look, I'm not leaving my buddy behind. I got to watch after my swim buddy, And so they just don't go. Sometimes, and we've seen this, there's a hotel down in Louisville, pretty famous for having a haunting there. The a young couple, years and years ago, got married, and the brand new husband, somehow, don't know, but he fell down the elevator shaft.
Oh no.
and she found out and dived in after him.
Okay.
And so you can still see her there in her wedding dress in the hotel down in Louisville.
Oh,
And some
wow.
people, yeah, there have been sightings of her. And so you have that kind of an episode where that's just not going to happen.
So I mean, in situations like that, where you are are these people's souls just constantly reliving jumping down an elevator shaft, or is this like a some sort of a imprint, like a spiritual imprint on space, or like what do you think is going on there when when people are seeing like a lady in a wedding dress jumping down an elevator shaft?
Um, well, here's the thing. There, like we said, spiritual imprint. Whenever I go into a house, there is a different energetic feel to whether this is a residual print or residual energy, or if it's an actual active um, person who's actually in the building. Or what often happens as well is they will die. They will then go into the light, but then choose to come back voluntarily to visit their relatives.
Okay.
And so that is entirely possible. And because they're coming from the other side of the veil, they have more power to visit with. So if you're just a spirit caught in like a place like Waverly Hills, okay, um, you have very little energy to tap into in order to make an appearance. So, which is why we see a lot of shadows. And you'll see that on some of these TV shows on TV, like Ghost Adventures and some of these other shows like that, where they'll capture video of a shadow moving across a hall.
Right.
Well, that's a shadow because there's not enough energy for them to actually produce a clothed image of themselves in body in order for you to look at. So they're pulling that. That's why we get the cold spots in the basements and we get cold spots in hot rooms or whatever. They're actually pulling atmospheric energy in to try to create enough energy to manifest a visage of themselves in order to allow us to see them as a contact. And so sometimes the most they can conjure up is just enough to make a dark spot in the room. And then we go, oh my God, it's a demon. It's a demon. It's like, no, it's Uncle Ned. I'm here to try to tell you something.
Okay. And
And
is
so,
that why like EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, is it like just an energy? Is that why some can maybe show up as a shadow and others show up as a voice or some sort of a noise or something like that?
well, um, the psychic medium, John Edward, and I've
Hmm.
seen him, I've seen his shows before, in person. And
Okay.
I have watched the line of people standing behind him waiting to get their turn to talk through him. It's fascinating. And he described in one of his books, he said, for a departed relative, especially one who's crossed over, for them to come down and visit us and have any kind of a conversation with the living, because we're on two different ends of the radio station here. In order for them to slow down enough to be able to make contact with us at this vibration level, it's like trying to make a phone call at the bottom of an Olympic swimming pool. It takes all the energy you've got just to get down there to the phone. And once you reach it, you can't stay very long and you can't talk very much. So oftentimes, and this is why like EVPs get caught on tape, is because EVPs have a much broader range of gain. You work radio shows, you know what gains on a mic are.
Right. Hmm.
And so the gains on a mic are much broader than the gains of our ears. We only listen between 20 and 20,000 hertz.
Hmm.
Okay. The lowest radio station on your radio in the car is 88.1 hertz. So that's 4 times what we're allowed to hear. That's why you have to have that device to slow those signals down to the point where the human ear can pick them up. On a radio scale, let's just suppose that you and I here physically, our bodies are at 88.1. Now, the radio goes up to 107.8 or whatever.
Hmm.
But you see, dead people are like 421.5. They're way up there. So we can't listen to 428.5 or whatever I said. So we're on this one radio station. And sometimes, you know, if you're trying to tune in with your car, the older cars that have the knobs on them, and sometimes if you turn the knob just a little bit, you get a little fuzz and the stereo light will blink on and off. Some of the younger viewers with the newer cars won't understand this, but sometimes when your knob is just not quite on, you get a little bit of static, a little bit of fuzz, and the stereo knob light is blinking on and off. You're not quite on it, but you're picking up other stuff. And some people can pick up other stuff. And sometimes when the mind wanders, that's when most people say that they're picking up things. It's like, okay, I'm settling down for the night. I'm just sitting here, just zoned out watching TV. And all of a sudden, that's when everything's happening. I say, oh, no, it's always happening. It's just that's when you're noticing it. But for a departed person to slow down from 425.8 and come all the way down, what really happens is they get down to about 100.
Okay.
And so we have to try to speed up our vibration from 88 up as closest to 100 as we can. And so what happens is there's a gap, because if we could both meet at the same station, at the same vibration, we would be able to have a walking, talking, back and forth conversation just like they were living. We'd be able to talk back and forth, no problem. But what happens is there's a gap about how far they can slow down and how fast we can speed up. And so there's this gap. Now, if you take that on a graph and you mark it over time, and time is the linear and the vibration speed is the vertical, then what you have is, because of vibration, because of like electrical energy follows a sine wave, you have an up and down series of frequency. And you have amplitude modulation where there's a different strength behind the signal. So if I'm trying to talk to a dead person, I've got my mind tuned into that channel and I'm trying to get myself there to have some kind of a point of contact, and they are in the room and they're slowing down as much as they can, and we've got this gap. Over time, the gap will close for blips here and there. So what happens is, if I'm trying to say, okay, somebody says, hey, look, I want to talk to Grandpa Jim. All right, fine. Grandpa Jim. And I try to get, hey, whatever you're doing, if you got time to come in here and talk. And over time, I will get vowel sounds. Over time, I might get a picture of a dog or a car, or I might get a picture of a house, or I might get a feeling about something, or there might be some emotional content attached to something I'm being shown.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to put all that together like a jigsaw puzzle and go, okay, say, look, I'm seeing a great big brown dog. It kind of looks like a Great Dane, but beefier. And they go, oh yeah, that was Grandpa's dog. His name was so-and-so, whatever. And that just recently happened to me. I'm like, okay, why is this dog running through the room now?
Right.
It's not a Great Dane, but it's not a Saint Bernard, but it's a great big brown dog, a black dog with brown spots on it. It kind of looks like a Dobie or a Rottweiler, but big. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was Dad's dog, blah, 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 blah. And, okay, so what about this truck I'm seeing? It's an older truck. It looks like it might have like a tow winch out the back. Oh yeah, Dad would go out and buy cars and he would tow them home and we'd fix them and blah, blah, blah. So it's not like having this back and forth conversation where two people can just sit down and, smoke a cigar and chew the fat. It's more like I'm trying to put together the pieces of, okay, so I'm in this house and these people are complaining that there's something in this house that's not really happy with them. And I go, okay, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What's your name? Why are you here? When did you die? How long you been here? And blah, 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 blah. And I hear a vowel sound that might sound like Fred or Ed or Ned or something like that. And so I got to figure out, okay, I'm hearing this E sound, this vowel sound. So what does that mean? What does that actually, what am I picking up?
Right.
And so then I have to ask the people who are living in the house, do you know somebody named Fred, Ned, Ed, any other kind of sound like that, Ted? Or, does that mean anything here? And I'm like, no, my grandpa's name was Ralph. And I'm like, okay, well then it's nobody connected to you that we can establish at this point. So I have to sit here and try to figure out these puzzles. And when people come in with the equipment and they're recording EVP, and if you've done this, you'll notice that like sometimes if you're, in order to catch EVP, you have to talk out and hopefully get a response.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the good ones will actually say one question and then shut up for 10 or 15 seconds. The bad ones will just like, where are you? Who have you been? What was your name? Where'd you live here? Where'd you die? What'd you do? And like, well, you let him answer the first question, man. Come
exactly.
on.
Give him some time.
Like slow it down. These people are still trying to interact with this world yet. And so what happens is because the wider gain of the microphone and the greater sensitivity of what it's able to pick up, these little blips can be captured on that digital media.
Okay.
And so whenever we're talking back and forth with whatever could be in the room, we're getting these little blips of answers. And audibly, sometimes it only comes across as a knock.
Okay.
Have you ever experienced that where you're trying to record an EVP and you're asking a question and like down the hall there might be a thump or a knock, or it sounds like a shoe fell on the floor or something like that? That is the actual answer. That's what we can hear out of that. But when you slow that tape down, what you get is, I died. That's all you'll get. And it comes across as a
knock.
Like that.
Right.
A knock. And you're like, okay, I heard a knock. And somebody go, oh my God, it's a demon. It's like, no, it's not a demon. That was the answer. I'm going to go play this tape back and sit here for the next 6 hours trying to play this back. And it's going to come across as something really fuzzy that we can say, it kind of sounds like I died here.
That's got to be really frustrating for the dead people, because you're trying to like convey messages to the people in the house, and it's like, oh, they think, like you said, it's a demon or somebody's trying to scare the hell out of me. But
that has always been the impression that I get when I go into houses and I'm talking to spirits and all that. They get so incredibly frustrated. I mean, because imagine you're still like right now, I still feel like I'm a 25-year-old man. I'm much, much older than that, but I still feel young. I still feel vital. I still feel, I go out and run and I work out and I'm in pretty good health. And on the inside, I'm just as young as I was when I was 25. I just over the years now, I have better and better experience of being 25, but I don't feel as old as I am. And so when I die and unzip this suit, I'm still going to feel like the person I am, even though I'm looking down at my own dead body sitting there on the floor or in the hospital bed or wherever it's going to be at that time, 40 years from now. And so I can look down and go, yeah, that's my freaking dead body. And here comes my adult children in here who are all, 50 and 60 years old. And I'm going to try to talk to them. It's like, don't worry, everything's cool. I'm right here with you. I'm going to be behind you. I'm taking care of you. And they're like, oh my God, Dad's dead. Like, no, I'm right here in the room with you. And the people that I have talked to, both living and deceased, it is incredibly frustrating when they're trying to get a message across. And people are either, oh, it's a demon, or I think it's my grandmother. I need you to make sure. And that's the ones I really enjoy. It's like, okay, well, let's find out about grandma and let's see if we can, find out who's in the house and what's going on with that. And we'll try to answer those questions for you.
Now, how can you tell the difference between just a regular, spirit of a human and a demon? Because you said you have had a few experiences with what you think were demons. Like, how do you know?
Okay. That would be like, how do you know you're listening to country on the radio versus listening to classic rock?
Okay.
It's a different wavelength. It's a different energy. People, as much a dicks as we can be to each other, and trust me, we can be dicks, right? I don't like to use the word demon because it has too much church attached to it. And none of this is about religion. Because our religions here on earth have nothing to do with these things that come in. And so I don't like using the word demon. And the word demon itself, there's a whole history I could talk about where that word came from and how it got distorted and how the church during the Middle Ages altered the definition of that word to make it something else. And we do that in the English language a lot. Anyway, we will change the main meanings of words to fit the times or the purpose. But if okay, let's talk about a house I went into. I got called into this house because the people were complaining there's something really, really bad here. The 14 or 15-year-old daughter has been drawing some really, really scary pictures. And we're getting like lights are turning off and we're getting a lot of really bad feeling in the house. And this really feels horrible. This like nothing I could put my finger on. It just really feels bad. And there's just this horrible emotional content in this house. So the friend of mine that knows these people contacted me and says, hey, I think we got a house we can go see. All right, fine. Well, he is also gifted, and I've had him on some investigations with me. So he and my wife and I, the three of us go out and we go take a look at this house. And let me do some explaining first before I finish the story.
Okay.
When these things are in people's homes, they imagine it this way. So imagine that you are hurtling through space in a spaceship at 1 billion miles an hour, and you're just screaming through space. And all of a sudden, you blow a gasket in your spaceship, and there's a planet nearby, and you scan it, and hey, it can support you. You can breathe on this planet. All right, fine. So you're going to take your smoking, squeaking, sparking spaceship, and you're going to crash land onto this planet. Now your ship is busted up and you can't get out. So you're on this planet now, far, far, far away from Earth. And you step outside, and yes, you can breathe without your spacesuit on. So now you're wandering around. And this place looks an awful lot like Earth. The plants are a little bit different, but yeah, it's okay. It's the same. And you notice on top of the hill, there's a farmhouse up there. Now, as a human being, you know that you need certain things to survive. You need food and water now. You need clothing soon, and you're going to need shelter eventually. So here you are wandering through this, you're approaching this farmhouse, and you notice outside on the clothesline, there's bed sheets, and there's some farmer's overalls. And you go, okay, I've got clothing and I've got sheets I can make a shelter out of. Now, are you evil if you go up there and take the bed sheets to make a shelter? I mean, honestly, are you sinister and evil and demonic because you took the bed sheets?
Right. I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
No, you're not. You're not an evil, horrible demon who's trying to steal someone's soul. You're just basically trying to get by the night without freezing to death. You're also not an evil, sinister, soul-sucking demon because you took the overalls. You're also not a soul-sucking evil demon if you notice that the lady of the house has an apple pie cooling on the windowsill like they used to do years ago. And you take the pie because, man, you got to eat.
Right.
But that doesn't make you evil. I mean, sure, yeah, it's a dick move to take food from other people, but I mean, it's not like you're going to go to work, okay, because you can't really interact around this world too awful much. So, hey, there's a pie there. You're going to take the pie and eat it. Okay, you've survived now. But that doesn't make you evil. So let's translate that to some of these things that tend to come into our world. By quantum physics, our world is simply a manifestation of the vibration of the energy that makes up the entirety of the universe. Every planet, every beam of light, every photon from every star in the sky is all made of the same stuff. It's basically energy vibrating at different speeds in order to construct different levels of matter. Your body is made up of the same thing as your chair you're sitting in. This is quantum physics. It's not even
E equals MC squared stuff.
It is exactly the E equals MC squared.
Yeah.
And that formula basically states that matter is energy and energy is matter. Some of it has manifested into a place where I can make dresser drawers out of it. And some of it is light beams and photons, which bounce off of stuff and come into my eyeball so I can see the dresser that I'm looking at. And sometimes even things like thought are quantum physics. We think things and they become things. So the entire universe is built on vibration of energy operating at different frequencies and speeds. Now, this particular earth that you and I are standing on, you're in your spot wherever it is that you are, and I'm standing here in my spot where I am. This earth and all the stars and skies around us and all the planets and everything on this universe is operating at a specific bandwidth of frequency. There are more stations on the radio, which means that, yes, as we exist here, the multiverse theory says that there are other vibrations and other universes in other places where other things can exist on those locations. We are not all that there is in the universe, and I've never, ever once tried to believe that we are. So there are other things on other dimensions. Sometimes in the fabric of this time and place, sometimes there's gaps and holes and tears in our world. And sometimes some things get through from other places and can't find their way back. And they become the stranded astronomer or astronaut.
I see. Okay.
So now they're in this realm. And well, at best, you might see a shadow moving around. So now I have to determine if that's a shadow from a dead person trying to manifest, or if that's a shadow from something that broke into this time and place and is trying to survive. Now, some of these things that come in from other places, they realize that the real fast food, the McDonald's food that they can get a hold of real quickly here, is emotional energy. So now in order to eat, they have to be able to conjure up emotions out of these little beings that are scurrying around on this planet. So now, if I wanted to make you feel something, it is much easier for me to make you feel fear than it is to make you feel joy or love.
Okay. That's true.
Okay. Because if you and I were standing in a room and I lunged at you really quickly, you would be fearful.
Right. Right. Instantly.
Even if I were to come in for a hug, you would startle at first. Like,
Right.
okay, wow. Yeah, that was quick. That was abrupt. That was, unsettling. Now I can eat. So if I'm this little thing that comes in from some other place in the world and I need to eat, all I really have to do is conjure up enough energy to make a sound or stomp my foot or knock something over. And you're going to go, holy shit, it's a demon. Oh my God, it's a demon.
Right.
Oh! And then like, okay, now I get to eat.
So it's like the apple pie is the fear.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Now, just like there are, hey, look, I'm not going to try to whitewash this. There are some people on this earth who have jobs that are of a different level than other jobs. We have generals and we have senators and, we have CEOs of major corporations, and we have people that, they take out the trash at the end of the day so that way the place can operate cleanly. Right. So we have different levels of different kinds of things that happen here on earth. There are different levels of these different kinds of things that happen that tend to break into our world and inhabit here. Now, some of these things are what I call commander level beings. These guys, they can boss these other little ones around and tell them what to do. And I've seen that happen. So knowing all of this, let's go back to this house I had to visit. So we go in there and we're looking around the house and I see two horribly hideous looking little dog-like creatures in this house. And my buddy, he sees them too. And they look really nasty, vicious. They have like disjointed elbows, like their front legs look like a Cloverfield. The elbows are all kind of jacked up, but the head is kind of like upside down. It kind of looks almost like a person, but almost kind of like a dog or almost like a wolf or something. And the torso is really thin when the ribs are sticking out, and it's got spiky spine bones sticking out of it. It's really nasty. And so I'm like, well, what the heck are these things doing in the house? So my buddy and I, we get down and we basically get rid of these things. All right.
Okay.
And we're going through the whole house and we're cleaning everything up, and there's nobody to pass on. There's just a whole lot of really bad energy in this house. And I looked at him and I go, there's something else happening here. There's something else in this house. And I can't find it. And he says, I've been feeling that way the whole time we've been here. And I said, there's something else, and I cannot leave because something else is in this house and it's hiding from me. So I gathered everybody in the house up, the mom, her daughter, the new boyfriend. I said, I need everybody to come in here in the living room, sit down for a second. I need everybody to just be quiet because I got to go to another place to find this thing. And I pulled a kitchen chair out and I sat it in the middle of the floor. And I said, I just need everybody just to sit still and just hang on. So I kind of went astral for a little bit, and I went to a different level of existence for a moment to try to find what this thing was in the house. And I never could find it. what I found myself in was a huge room, and there were like tapestries hanging from the ceiling, huge long tapestries, and they would move and create an ever evolving labyrinth. So as I'm walking through this, I hear a voice who says, "She's mine. You're never going to get her back." And I said, "You don't understand who you're dealing with. Once I get through this maze and I find you, you're going to be in a world of hurt. And yes, you will be letting go of her. We're taking her back."
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "You will never get her back. She's mine and I'm keeping her." And I said, "Buddy, you just said the wrong words." Well, I have kind of like a working agreement with the Archangel Michael, who like, does this kind of stuff because it's his job. And he and about 20 of his fellas came in and whooshed over my shoulder and went in, and everything disappeared. And I'm like, okay, I want to get into some of that too. Hey, this is my fight. I was the one who showed up here, and I started going forward. I thought, I'm going to follow them in there and I want to get my taste of this, right? Well, another angel came in and grabbed me, and she says, "You can't go in there." And I go, "No, wait, this is my job. This is what I do. This is, I'm going to have fun with this. This guy defied me. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take my licks out too." And she said, "You were never supposed to take care of this. We just needed you to open the door so we could get to it."
Okay.
And I said, "Well, that's kind of no fun on my part." And she goes, No. You allowed this to be taken care of tonight. It was because of you and your abilities that you allowed us to get in the door so we could go in there and get this thing out of here. Trust me, it's over."
You set it in motion. Yeah.
Yes, you were the key that unlocked the door that allowed us to make this happen. And I said, "Okay, as long as I did some good tonight, then that's all I care about. I just wanted to make good, but trust me, I wanted to get my licks in on this thing, right?" So now, next thing I know, I'm back in my chair and I'm looking around the room and everyone is gawking at me. They're looking at me like I just grew horns, right? And I'm like, what are you all staring at? And they're like, "Wherever you went, whatever you did, we felt that in this room. This room changed the tone, the humidity, the temperature, the lighting, everything in this room became so much different. Wherever it was you went affected here." And I went, "Well, okay, well then I know I'm not making that crap up, right?"
Right.
Now, the girl, the 14 or 15-year-old girl that was there,
Mm-hmm.
when we showed up that night, she had about the mental capacity of an 8 or 9-year-old, psychologically speaking. And you can talk to some psychiatrists and psychologists about this. Oftentimes, if you have a person who is not acting their biological age, it sometimes can indicate, in some instances, I'm not going to say it's always, sometimes it refers to some kind of abuse as a child. And so because the child had to endure some kind of abuse at a particular age, they kind of, had to like go someplace else in their mind for a while things were happening to them. And so oftentimes they don't emotionally mature past that point too very far. So when I showed up that night, I'm like, okay, I wonder what's been happening with this person, because she's not acting 14 or 15. She's acting 9. And I thought, okay, well, I can't say anything about this right now, but this is something that's very interesting. Well, by the end of the night, after I had gone in there and done all that extra work, suddenly now there was a 15-year-old girl in the room. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds weird. And I'm sure to your listeners, it sounds like I'm making this whole thing up, but there were 3 other people in that house that all saw the same thing. And it's like, okay, this girl has returned back to normal now. She's acting her age now. And it was just one of those very weird instances where I can say, yeah, over the course of time of doing this, I've run into some really weird, goofy, wicked stuff. And that was one of those times where I can say, yeah, this is why I do this job, is because of this.
Wow.
This is why I took on this role, is because I can save people from that.
Mm-hmm. Where you're making an actual difference in their lives.
I'm making a difference.
Yeah.
I'm improving the conditions of people's existence in a way that very few people can affect in that way. And so I go, okay, this is why I'm here. And so that's why I do these things.
And you've done, how many cases have you done in the area over the years?
Oh, geez. Probably 150,
Oh,
200.
wow. That many. Wow.
Yeah. I used to keep like a running journal of them, and it just got to the point where, okay, I'm not even writing them down anymore, because we would go and we'll be there for like an hour and a half. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you got somebody to cross over here. Bingo, get them across, and that's it. And I used to write them down, and then I just started forgetting to come in and write them down. And the next thing you know, I was like, okay, what was the last 6 houses we just did? And my wife were like, I can't remember. There was that one dude with that one place and that one thing.
Just another paranormal investigation.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was a year ago. My wife and I went to a house at another smaller town east of here,
Hmm.
and it was in Boonville. And okay, there was this 80-year-old guy there, and his wife had died, and he and his wife had always felt like there was some stuff happening in the house anyway. And okay, it happens in every house. I mean, people are under the impression nowadays that, like, when you die, you go someplace else, way, way far away on the other side of the universe. You're someplace totally different that's not even here. And you're over there somewhere wearing a white robe, playing a harp, and you're on a cloud, and everything is just glorious and happy and romantic. And that's not how it is. You unzip the meat soup and you're still walking around here. I mean, you can go to any restaurant and kind of open up your senses, and there might be 8 people eating in the restaurant, and 4 of them might have somebody standing next to them. And so it's not like, oh, geez, there's a dead person in the room. How unique. And like, no, it's not unique at all. This is every day. So we go to this house, and, this 80-year-old guy, he's like, yeah, my wife's died, and, things have kind of ramped up since then. And I got this new girlfriend, and I'm looking at the new girlfriend, and she's like younger than me.
Okay.
And I mean, it's not too
Yeah.
difficult to figure the
No,
picture out here.
no. She's
Eh,
pissed. Yeah.
yeah, the old lady is kind of miffed off about this,
Sure.
and I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at my wife, and we're both thinking gold digger. She's like 50, he's 80, she's sitting there smoking cigarettes, and they're like, yeah, we got you pegged, babe. We've got your number written out. And so they're like, and you feel kind of like your dead wife is kind of in the house, kind of throwing things around at you, huh? And he's not really getting it, and we're hinting around about it, and he's like, well, I think she's kind of pissed because well, this weekend we're going to go to Vegas and get married. And I'm like,
Oh, you think?
Are you serious? And we're looking at each other like, oh, this is glorious,
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so can't imagine why the old lady who spent her life with this guy would be pissed that he's now, being duped by this gold digger who's going to come in there and take his house and his fortune and everything else, because he's not got many more years left. And so okay, so but there's more to this story. I keep feeling that there's more layers going on. And he says, the whole time I've lived in this house, I felt like there's a couple of guys here that were some really, really mean guys, and they're not really happy with me here either. And I'm walking through this little house, and I'm like, yeah, yep, I kind of feel that too. I go, these guys weren't really, really awesome when they were alive. These guys were real, meatheads,
Hmm.
and they didn't live anytime soon. These guys are, 1800s or whatever. Come to find out, by the time we get done with this, we were there for 3 hours. These were the sons of a white settler who had come into this area. And the old man had said, yeah, there's 160 acres attached to this house, but I don't go to any of them because I don't like being on the property. I stay in the house because I feel better here. And so there's 160 acres here in this whole plot of land. These 2 guys who were still in this house were the sons of this white settler who had come in from the east and decided this was the perfect plot of land, and he's just going to take it. Well, there happened to be a small little tribe of Indians here, probably about 100 to 200 Native Americans who were living here, and their people had been here for thousands of years, and they had lived on the land and raised their horses and all that. And in the middle of the night, one night, this guy had come in and slaughtered the whole damn tribe,
Oh, wow.
lined them all up, slaughtered them. And
Mhm.
instead of giving them their proper burial, he just piled them all up and burnt them. So now, he says, yeah, he says, if you go out the back door there, see where that swing is, he goes, you go a little bit further than that, you're going to feel what I'm talking about. He goes, it don't feel right out there. So my wife and I go out, and oh my God, you want to talk about the misery and sorrow and the absolute, just the anger and the fury and the hatred and the grief. And so I'm looking around and I go, holy cow, we picked up on the whole picture. Like, he slaughtered these people. This dude, he lined them all up in the middle of the night and just went out. He just, you know, he went out them like Pol Pot. He just lined them up and just shot them all, and then just put them in a heap and burned them and said, well, it's my land now. And so my wife and I, we put out the call that day, and we called in the light and said, okay, you can't have your mound. That time has passed, but we're going to let you go to the Great Spirit. And we looked out, and what we could see was mothers gathering up their children. We could see the men stomping out the campfires. We saw people gathering up their drums and rattles, and they were all heading in toward the light and going home. And there was probably, I would say, at least 150, maybe bordering on 200 people, men, women, and children, all basically gathering up their stuff and going home. And we sat there for like 25 minutes while they were parading past us and just sobbed. It's actually making me tear up a little bit just talking about it. It was really emotional. And of course, we went back into the house and we're talking to the guy. I go, I think we've got everything taken care of out there in the yard. I think you're going to be okay from now on. And, it was something that probably just needed to be kept to ourselves at that point. But it was, that was the first time we'd ever crossed more than like one or two people at one time. And, that was a horrific event that we had to go clean up because somebody else had done something so nefarious and so horrifying that people still couldn't find their way home after that.
And so not only are you doing a service for the living, you're also doing a service for those who have passed. Like these Native Americans are just kind of stuck in this limbo world where, for hundreds of years, and you allowed them to be able to move on. And
yes,
that's
yes.
amazing.
And that's what I tell people on the phone. And then whenever they say, look, I think I got a demon in my house, and like, no, you probably don't. You probably just have an angry person in your home, but we're going to bring peace to you and them. And we're going to do it in a way that's ethical and that's moral and that allows everyone to come to terms with where they are and what's going on and find their peace. And that's what we do. That's what my wife and I do at Epic is bring peace to the living and the dead in a way that some people might not be able to have access to being able to do. I think that most people can be trained to do this if they open up their mind and put away certain preconceived notions about how things are and accept how things really are. And I think that if the human body and the human spirit are built in a way that no one can be excluded from this kind of thing happening or being able to learn how to at least see and communicate. And this is not something where I say, oh, no, I'm special. Only I can do these things. I'm a better and gifted person than everybody else, because that's bull.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught, I saw these things from a kid. I mean, I can remember as a kid seeing stuff like this, and I just thought it was normal to do that. But I'm not exceptional by any means. I just have, a more readily available acceptance of the way the universe is built. And I understand it from a spiritual and a scientific point of view. We're like, this is quantum. This is how the universe was constructed. We're not an accident. We're, I've heard people say we're nothing more than just beetles scurrying across the earth. And when we're dead, when biological death occurs, we are gone. And I'm like, no, dude, I've talked to enough dead people. I disagree with you. And, I've got a real good a friend of mine who um, he teaches metaphysics at a college around here, but he teaches it from the Immanuel Kant, Heidegger, the moral and ethical metaphysics of the idea of ethics. And, his idea is biological death is death. That's it. There is no, he goes, Deepak Chopra is wrong. There is no Atman. There is no this and that. He goes, there's nothing. We are nothing more than our personalities are a series of biological events that have been laid down in tracks of memory. And once that is done, it's over. And I go, okay, I respect your opinion. I get that. And I get why you would think that, whenever you see mom die and mom's laying there on the bed, she was breathing one moment and the next moment the color goes out. Yeah, it's easy to say once you're dead, you're friggin' dead and that's it. It's over. But I've talked to enough dead people where I disagree with that and I'm allowed to.
Absolutely. And when did you actually realize that you had this ability to communicate with the dead and like start seeing people had passed? And you said you were very young, a child.
Oh, it's actually kind of funny. So when I was a kid, I had all kinds of psychic visions and all that. And I could see aura and color and I had all kinds of things. And I can remember, one day I woke up and I said, I told my mom that, hey, Dad came in the room this morning and talked to me. And she said, no, he didn't. He never goes in your room in the morning. He wakes up at 5 a.m. and there's no way he walked into your room. And I said, he was wearing this shirt and he was wearing this tie. But the thing was, he didn't have legs.
Okay.
I said, he looked like an oval portrait frame was around him and everything around that portrait frame was my room. But in the portrait frame was Dad. And all you could see what was in the portrait frame, which was from about the chest up. So she said, well, I'll prove you wrong. And she calls into work and talks to my dad. And she goes, what shirt are you wearing? And it was the shirt. And what tie are you wearing? It was the tie. And she said, did you go in the boys' room? He goes, I would never go in there and wake those kids up. And she says, how'd you know what shirt he was wearing? I said, I'm telling you, he came into the room, but he didn't have legs. And there was another time where she's standing there watering the plants while I'm having my breakfast. It was summertime. I was eating breakfast a little bit late because I'm going to go out and spend the whole day outside. I'll come back after dinner, And I'm standing there and her aura was completely red and there was like flecks of yellow and orange in it and all that. And I said, hey, around you, like you're totally putting off this red vibe around you. And there's like flecks of different colors moving around in it. And she looked over at me. She goes, close your eyes. You're not seeing that. Now shut your face, eat your cereal and go outside and play.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped seeing it in color after that. I just stopped looking at it that way. So that was always happening. I could always kind of just,
You're always sensitive to that then.
I was always sensitive to it. So I got older and started working and, third shift is, pays more some places. And so I get on the police department and I don't know that I'm doing it. I didn't even realize I was still tuned into that kind of thing happening, but I could always tell when someone's going to attack me.
Oh, wow. That's a good trait to have then.
It's a good trait to have. I might be standing next to somebody or, standing with somebody next to a car and I say, why don't you reach in there and get your wallet out? Let me see your ID or whatever. And they would reach in and I would just like, the whole spidey sense thing where you could tell when things are, and I would just take a shift over to my left or to my right and I wouldn't be where they thought they left me. And they would turn around and be like, aha, and so I always had that, something bad's about to happen. I have found people in places where other cops didn't think a guy could hide. I'm like, no, he's right in this. He's right here. And I would call out like, seriously, dude, if you don't stand up and show yourself and I have to come in there and get you, you're going to hate me. And they'll come right out. Like, how'd you do that? Like, I knew he was in there. Like, I knew that guy was in there.
Wow.
And so I do that. And Well, cops do this thing. It came off of an old Joseph Wambaugh book. It's called Choir Practice, where dudes just sit around, kind of shoot the breeze after a run or whatever, and just kind of, hey, what was that run you had over there on Third Avenue? Like, oh yeah, this guy was doing this, whatever. So we'll just kind of sit there. We'll take a run and we'll go back out to our cars and just kind of stand there for a few minutes and gab a little bit and then get in our cars and drive away.
Sure.
And so the whole time, my whole career on third shift, I'd talk to somebody, and lo and behold, there's a shadow that moves from the garage to the tree. Hey, did you see that guy? No. You didn't see that guy. You moved behind that tree. No. And I would look, and there's another shadow moving from a car over to a garage. Like, you didn't just see that guy over there? So I just quit asking. Okay. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. So the whole time that I'm working on the police department, I'm also teaching martial arts. And the martial arts that I teach is based on pressure points. It's the George Dillman Karate International. And so the idea is that the kata that they would develop in China, Okinawa, and Japan, the movements in that kata aren't the movements that they tell you that they are. They actually map out like where to attack the next pressure point in line in order to disable the attacker so he can't fight anymore, normally because they're unconscious. So we would practice after class, and we sent all the lower belts home. All of us black belts and instructors, we'd all sit around and kind of practice on knockouts. And so you'd like, put your arm out like you're punching somebody, and it's like, okay, I want to hit this point, and this point, and this point, and it should short circuit you and you'll pass out. And we would do it, and hey, look at that, waking back up. And so we did that for years. And I wanted to be able to do it better. So I ran into a guy who was teaching Tai Chi, and he was able to move energy. Well, okay, fine. So I trained with him for a year, and he says, have you ever heard of this stuff called Reiki? I said, nope, haven't heard of it. I've heard of stuff called violating Indiana state law.
Right.
So he says, okay, well, once you come over to my house, he says, I will do a Reiki session on you, because I was telling him what I was feeling while I was doing Tai Chi. It's like, man, my hands are on fire and I can feel this thing going up my spine and all that. He goes, once you come out to the house, I'll do Reiki on you. I think you'd be good at it. So he does Reiki on me. And I went, holy moly, that is incredible. I've never felt anything like that. So he taught me how to do it. And so in March of 2009, I finished training with him on Reiki, and I went into business right then and there. Everybody I could talk to was like, you got to try this thing out. And so I started doing Reiki on everybody I could find. And I was renting spaces from yoga studios and bookstores and chiropractic offices and all that. And I've been doing this since 2009. And now I've got this thing that I do, Tri-State Holistic Wellness, where I do everything. And right now I'm going to college for therapeutic massage. So in the process of that, Reiki is the transmission of energy from the universe in order to help kind of get you lined back out again. Okay. It's kind of like, okay, my car is dirty. I'm going to wash it down with water to get the dirt off of it. And now look, it's shiny. Well, it's kind of like that on the inside. I'm bringing in energy from the universe. I'm going to wash you out on the inside. I'm going to get the energy moving in the channels in the direction that it needs to go. And that way you're all clean on the inside and you can operate again. Right. So in the process of tapping into that energy, I started seeing all kinds of things happening. And I would tell some of the people that I would, work with and some other things. And I had a friend of mine who was a psychic medium. He says, I would tell him, I was working on somebody and her dead dad came in the room and we were able to make peace about that. And he goes, okay, well, you need to sit down with me and I need to teach you how to do this. And so he was teaching me how to get into that. And we would go out to lunch and we would go out to dinner. He'd say, okay, look around the room. How many people are in the room? Like, there's like 10 people in the room plus 2 waitresses. He goes, no. Now blink your eyes and tell me how many people are really in the room. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, there's like 8 dead people in here. And he's like, yeah, okay, that's what you do. And so we would go on house clearings and we would go into people's homes and say, okay, let's go cross these people over and let's smudge the place and let's get all this going on. And so that's how I got learning how to do that. And now I do that on my own and I go into people's homes and I just try to establish the peace there.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned smudge earlier too. And I was meant to ask you, what do you mean when you say you smudge the home?
Smudging is an ancient practice. This is like thousands and thousands of years old. Like 10 to 30,000 years old. And what you do is you're burning specific elements because the smoke helps to clear a space. And so smoke in and of itself, whenever you're doing things like burning incense or you're burning sage or whatever, smoke is a molecule that carries light. And so what happens is, you ever like had an old muffler and you knock on it and you can hear the rust inside falling down?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So picture a light bulb. A light bulb works because you're taking 12 lanes of LA freeway traffic and trying to convert that down to a dirt goat path. So what you're doing is you're taking a lot of electrons that have been flying across these lamp cords and across the Romex in the walls of your house, and you're trying to jam all that down so only one molecule at a time will fit through that little bitty tiny element. Those collisions, whenever you collide those electrons like that, what they do is they put off light and heat, which is why the bulbs burn out, because the filament can't take heat for that long. So what you're doing is you're jamming all that energy into a small space. It puts off light and heat. Now, if the light that was putting off by that filament did not go past the glass, it would be called a dark bulb. Because yeah, it's putting off light, but I can't see it out here. Your body is the same way. You've got like 75 trillion cells in your body. Each one of those is like a small city. There's a mayor's office, there's a sewage department, there's a production factory. There's actually like 1,500 production factories in every cell. And there's proteins being made. There's sensory things being, done by the membranes. You got 75 to 100 trillion cells that are all acting like these individual little cities that are all connected together to make organs and tissues. Now, the energy they put off is not contained within the skin. It goes out past that. That's our aura. That's the energy that we produce out away from us, which is why, in America, we have this thing about, don't stand that close to me. It's uncomfortable. We have this personal space thing in America. In some countries, that personal space is much, much closer. And Americans got to get, we get
Right.
kind of unnerved if someone from the Middle East or Europe or Eurasia wants to stand right next to us to talk to us. It's like, dude, you got to back off. Those are fighting distances right there. You keep stepping into me like this, I'm going to swing. Because in America, like, you don't stand that close to me. You stand out here. And you can watch a crowd of people. And if there's two people standing next to each other, one of them will shift. So it's because of the energy we put off. There's a comfort zone of that. And so what happens is your emotions. Now, remember I said earlier, emotions are real. Thoughts are real. They are a quantum value. I actually read in a book that scientists have now determined that emotions have mass. They actually affect the world around us. So, if you listen to books like The Secret, or you watch the movie The Secret, or if you know anything about the law of attraction, or if you've read the Kabbalion, your thoughts become things. If you think the world is crap, the world is going to give you more crap to think about. If you think the world is an abundant opportunity, then what you're going to see around you is opportunities. Everything that you put out comes back.
And we see that with a lot of people we know. It's always the guy that complains, everything happens to me, the Eeyore of the bunch.
Absolutely.
Crap does happen to this guy. And, bad stuff does happen to everybody. But it's like some people, it's like, what the hell's going on over here? But it's that law of attraction where it's like, there's a reason that's happening, I think, sometimes.
Yes. In this world, you've got the Eeyores and you've got the Elon Musk, where everything is an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Mm-hmm, you're right.
Okay. And it's not because he's brilliant. I mean, he is, but it's because he uses his brilliance and he doesn't go, well, gee, the world's a great big pile of crap. He looks at it like, okay, well, this needs to be done in the world. How do we get that finished?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, if he were an Eeyore, he could not do those things. Right? Now, he may be weird and eccentric, and most people like that are. There's a very, very fine thin of a razor's edge between insanity and genius, and we all know this. Okay. So we put off energy everywhere we go, which is why empaths can pick up on other people's emotional states immediately because of the energy they're feeling from other people. The difference is that a lot of empaths will take on those feelings. And if they're in a room full of people, they start losing track of where their feelings end and someone else's feelings begin. Which is why you'll see a lot of people say, I don't like crowds. I don't want to be in a room. I don't like to go to parties. I don't like to be in all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, because in about 20 minutes, I don't know who I am anymore because I'm everybody else. Okay. So now if you take that concept and say, okay, every day that you come home from work, you spend the first hour bitching to your wife about your day at work and your boss and this project you had to do and how this coworker backstabbed you and the client's an idiot and doesn't even understand what you produce here and blah, blah, blah. And that's what you do is you come home. And then she says, yeah, that might be fine. You've had a bad day, but I've had this with the kids and the car broke down and I had to have this and we had to tow the car here and blah, 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 blah. And by the way, we got this bill coming up and your mother called and she wants this and blah, 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 blah. And so now it turns into this huge argument, right? That energy gets put out between the two of you and it goes and it collects into the material structure of the wall of the house. Remember, the walls of your house are nothing more than electrons jiggling around. The emotions you put off of you are electrons jiggling around. They just match up and they meet and places store things. Now, let me prove it to you because I mean, it sounds kind of goofy, but let me prove it. Tell me if you don't immediately notice the difference between walking into a hospital, walking into a funeral home, and walking into a cathedral.
You definitely do notice. There's the air changes, just everything about the whole mood, your emotional state kind of changes too.
Yes. Now, I have not been to Europe, but what I have heard from people who have is these cathedrals in Europe. You go to, St. Peter's Basilica. That is a humongous edifice, and it's like 1,500 years old. I mean, it's 1,000 years old, and people walk into there. What state of mind are they when they walk in there?
They're just in awe.
They're in awe, and they are they're coming in there to get close to God. Whatever you think that is, whatever version of God appeals to you, whatever that is for you, they go in there to get close to that. So they're in a reverent state of mind. They're in a pious state of mind. They're in a forgiveness state of mind. They're in a, I want to just achieve peace state of mind, right? And so when you walk into those enormous cathedrals all across Europe, you walk in there and that energy is in the room and it's been there for 1,000 years. You can't walk into those buildings and be pissed. Now, walk into a funeral home. What happens in funeral homes? You've got people sad that someone passed. Now you're dealing with friends and relatives that you might not have seen for a while. You might also be dealing with siblings that are fighting over what's left. And you've got, brothers that haven't spoken for 20 years that don't like each other, but, mom died. We got to be here. Hey, can you at least put up with me for an hour?
Exactly.
Okay. So you've got that energy in the room. It's not, funeral homes don't feel that way because of the dead people. They feel that way because of the live people. Think about what's happening in a hospital. You've got sick people that don't want to be there. You've got visitors that don't want to be there. You've got overworked, understaffed nurses that are dealing with both. You've got all that energy in a hospital. Everybody says, well, I hate going to hospitals. Well, I hate going to hospitals too, because I know what energy is going to be in there waiting for me. So now we get to go back to smudging. We know that buildings store that energy. And we know that when people come home to the sanctity of their home, they're as real as they're going to be. And the energy that's coming off of them is going to be where it is. And if you drink or you do drugs, that energy coming out is going to stay in that home. Smudging is like tapping on the muffler and letting the rust fall. The smoke goes up, and what I do is I go around the walls of the house and I let the smoke waft up. And what it does is it breaks loose all that emotional energy and lets it fall to the ground and be destroyed. It's like washing the car. Now everything's shiny. Now, from this point forward, what you bring into the house, that's up to you. You want to come home and shoot up, or you want to drink and fight and punch your wife in the head. That energy is on you, but I've cleaned the place now. We've tapped on the muffler and the rust has fallen down, and now we're in a good place here. Now, the smoke is only half the job. My emotional intention is the other half of the job. And the intention is I want to break up all this energy and I want it to dissipate. I want it to be destroyed. I want it to go away because it doesn't belong here anymore. We want to clean it all out. Now, just like the same way, if you've ever seen those pictures of a fighter jet running through space and he's right at the speed of sound. And you've seen those where they got those venticular clouds right in front of the jet. It's like those sound waves that get backed up because the sound he's putting out away from him, he's actually at the same speed of them until he crosses just past the speed of sound. And you hear that crack and the clouds blow away. And from down here, we hear the thunder of this. Oh yeah, another jet just broke the speed barrier, right? Yeah. Live in San Diego and tell me how often, you get to hear that, right?
Right.
I'm over here in Indiana where all of our jets are way up in the air and they've got, 150 people on them. So think about whenever you're smudging the house, as you're walking through the house with the smudge going on, you're collecting all that energy in front of you, just like a fighter jet collecting sound waves. And just like that, also think about as you're smudging the house, imagine the Zamboni driver at the hockey game, right? He doesn't just get out on the Zamboni and just drive around in circles and just kind of do this drunken thing where he just goes wherever he wants, right? Because if he leaves one little patch of non-smoothed ice, one little patch of rough ice can break a guy's ankle. It could cause a major calamity. So he has to use a pattern to keep all the broken ice in front of him and leave the smooth ice behind. In the exact same way that the guy who comes out at halftime during a basketball game, he's got the dust broom and he's going up and down because if he leaves a little bit of dust behind, somebody could slide and throw out an ACL. So when I'm smudging, I'm thinking about all this stays in front of me and I don't leave anything behind. And whenever I get finished with the whole house, it goes right out the front door. So now I've swept the house. It's clear. It's clean.
Okay. That explains that. I'd never heard the term smudge before, so
yep,
that's awesome.
Well, a lot of people call it saging.
Saging, I've heard. Yeah, okay. Smudge.
Yeah, well, you can use a lot of different things besides sage. Yeah, the four elements of the Native Americans was tobacco, sage, sweetgrass, and cedar. And if they wanted to, if they wanted to have a moment where they would say, right here's where we're going to build a spot where we're going to talk to Great Spirit, they would have to clear that space out first. And then they would have to bless that space so it'd be nice and clean. And then they would burn sweetgrass and say, hey, well, great spirits, come down here and talk with us and be with us. And so it was a big process. They'll oftentimes in a sweat lodge, they will coat the floor with sage leaves. So that way, as they're burning the rocks and that water is being evaporated out of the central pit, it is wafting all that sage up and you get to enjoy that moment of being immersed in that sage and cleansing you. So that way, whenever you are in the midst of your suffering and the sweat, your prayers can be heard.
I see. Okay. That makes sense.
And that's the same thing. Okay. Take a look at the typical prayer position, right? What's prayer position?
Well, I mean, you're basically kneeling or crossing your hands and
you usually have palms together.
Palms together, yeah.
They're usually somewhere near your upper chest. Your hands may either be with straight fingers or with fingers latched. Why did that come about? Why do we have so many paintings of people with their hands pressed together at their upper chest? Why did that become the quote, quote, prayer position? They even do it at the end of yoga. Stand with your feet together, hands up in prayer position. Now bow, namaste. Okay. That came about because at the time referred to in the Bible, during the time like thousands of years ago, 4 or 5,000 years ago, right? The idea of getting a bath, hell, even up through the Middle Ages, getting a bath was a twice-a-year event. You didn't get a bath every day. We Americans is like, oh my God, European smell. And well, yeah, because they're not so. Like, first of all, they don't coat themselves with 1,000 products like we do, and they don't they don't feel the need to strip themselves down the way we do with baths and lotions and soaps and all this other crap with all these chemicals. Now, back, you know, up until, well, heck, even my parents would get a bath once a week. And that was in the 40s and 50s. Okay. So this idea of I got to get up every morning and take a shower and scrub myself down and exfoliate and all this, that's a brand new thing. So you're talking about a group of people that took a bath twice a year. And even in the Bible, that they said that the Hebrews would only do it right before their huge celebrations. They had 2 big feasts of a year, and you had to be clean in order to enjoy the feast.
Right.
All the other days of the year, you would use essential oils, and you would wash your body down with essential oils that would be perfumed. Like they would use olive oil or, some other kind of oil normally from olives, because it's the easiest to get at. And cottonseed oil is very difficult to get. You have to use hexane, which is what they use to turn crude oil into gasoline, which is why I never eat oils. So in order to keep you from getting staph infections, crotch rot, heat rash, and having bugs and all that other stuff growing in your beard and your hair, because, dudes back then had long hair and long beards. That was a mark of distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So you rubbed oil into your beard. You rubbed oil into your hair. You put oil under your armpits. You put oil in your crotch. And that kept you clean. It kept you sanitary. And it kept you smelling nice, because, it's hard for you to have kids and build your housely kingdom if your wife don't want to be around you naked.
This is true. Yeah.
Okay. So now, because we know from aromatherapy that every aroma out there, every flower scent, every tree bark, every root, it affects the mind in a different way. If I want to elevate my energy, I will inhale lemon or orange or something like that, pine.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to relax, which is what I do with my clients in Reiki, I will put lavender on my hands, lavender essential oil. And I will hold my hands over their face so they're breathing in all that lavender, and it calms the nervous system. If I want to elevate my spirit, I'll use what the Catholic Church has used for 1,000 years, which is frankincense and myrrh. That's what's in those censers that they put out over everybody in the cathedral, because it raises the spirit and it essentially raises your vibration so you can commune with God. It also helps, because of the smoke, to clear the space of any negative energy you brought in with you that day. But you'll notice, before they start to do the Eucharist, they always come around and they censor the altar, they censor the elements, they censor everything, and they'll walk through the crowd and they'll waft that big old censer around with them, and it's just smoking, right? And the whole place will be filled with smoke. It's to get that place cleared out. So now, if I want to elevate my spirit during a time of personal prayer, I would rub frankincense and myrrh oil on my hands and put them together right underneath my face and inhale that aroma.
Ah, okay.
That's why we have prayer position.
That makes sense. Okay. I'd never thought about that. So, wow.
Yeah. That's why it's there. It's because of the culture where it came from. We think like we're so original, but everything that we do is thousands of years old. We're not all that smart,
Well, I have so many more questions, and actually, one thing I wanted to get into, but I think we've run out of time, so I think maybe next time. One of your encounters on the job was actually featured on a Travel Channel episode of Paranormal 911.
Oh, yes.
And I really want to get into that, but I think maybe next time we can maybe go into that. So if people want to check out that episode. I would love to have it next time. And now that during this show, I've been able to kind of expound on the metaphysics and the quantum physics of what actually happens and what can happen. Mm-hmm. It will allow me to do a lot less backup explaining for what happened on that particular event. Let me just say, if you go and watch the show, it's Paranormal 911 on the Travel Channel. You can see it on Amazon Prime. You can see it on YouTube. It is season 1, episode 12. The episode is called Demon Boss. And it's called Demon Boss because I told the producers when they were filming this up in Buffalo,
I said, it was kind of like where you're playing a video game, but you got to go through the minions before you get to the boss.
Right.
You got to go through 28 levels. Like if you're playing Donkey Kong, right? You're going to go through 28 levels of barrels and all this kind of stuff before you finally get to the monkey, right? And it's just the same thing. I had to go through all these minions before I could get to the boss. And so that I said, he was like the demon boss. And then they said, okay, that's a great name for the show. But if you watch the episode, it's season 1, episode 12, Demon Boss. They were supposed to give me the full hour because they filmed me for almost like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. And they were originally said, okay, well, your segment's going to be, the first half hour of the show. So that's 22 minutes after the commercials. And they said, okay, no, actually, I've changed my mind. You're going to get the whole show. But what they did was they took my story, and the format of the show is first responders who encounter scary stuff. So that's the whole premise of the show. It's not what they did. It's not whether they captured evidence. It's like, hey, I'm a cop. I did a burglary call and I saw something scary. Here's my story. And so because I was a cop when I did this thing, I wrote them the story out and I said, hey, if you want to talk about this, let me have it. And so we got around to filming this. They took my story and had to change it to not only fit the format, but the time frame. So when I do tell you this story, it is much, much different than what that TV show, like I said, they had to meet the format, they had to meet the time frame. And so that's I knew that going in. So I'm not even miffed about it. Like, okay, I know this is going to happen. But yeah, if I'm given the opportunity to come back a second time, I would love to go into that story because it is much different.
Well, definitely. And I'll have links to that episode in the show notes, and I'll have links to all of the ways people can get a hold of you, Joe, and
Absolutely.
in the show notes. And how, if people need to get a hold of you to, for your business, or how would they do that? Well, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can either reach me on Facebook Messenger. You can email me at one of my several emails. You can reach me at joe@tristateholisticwellness.com, or you can reach me at epicparanormalpeace@gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll have all of those in the show notes at rivercitymystery.com/6. So if anyone wants to check all that out. So, and you've kind of agreed to be our subject matter expert on all things paranormal in the area. So we'll definitely have you back to talk about, specific issues. Like you said, now that we've kind of discussed who you are and what you do, maybe kind of dig in a little bit into the details. So
I would relish the opportunity.
All right. And if anyone would like to ask Joe any questions, feel free to contact me at rivercitymystery.com/contact. And you can leave a voice memo or a text message, and I can submit those questions to Joe for the next time he's on the show, or we can maybe even set up a time for the three of us to get together and talk. I appreciate you joining me today, Joe, and thank you very much.
Oh, I'm grateful that you asked me to be here. This is a great honor. Thank you.